If roguelikes exist, then addictive games exist too. This happens on basically every platform, but I think it's even better on Android. And if you think roguelikes are only those classic isometric games, think again. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the best roguelikes available both online and offline, and you'll also see a few that are very different from the usual ones. So make sure to leave a like and let's get started. This might sound a little unusual, but this roguelike is also a story-driven game. Let's talk about Warm Snow. The roguelike elements are mainly focused on the combat. During each run, you'll progress through a series of stages, collecting upgrades and improving your character as you fight your way forward. These roguelike mechanics are what shape the action and keep every run feeling fresh. But that's not all. The game also features a full story mode, and it's actually a very good one. You play as a character investigating a mysterious phenomenon. The snow in his homeland has never stopped falling, and he wants to uncover the truth behind it. The result is a game that manages to be incredibly addictive in both aspects. The story keeps you interested in what happens next, while the roguelike combat keeps every battle exciting. It's a very underrated game, but definitely one that's worth playing. Now let's talk about an extremely intense and chaotic roguelike, but also one of the best games on this list, VALHALLA Survival. The first thing you'll notice is that the game is played in portrait mode, so you'll need to hold your phone vertically. The main objective is to survive through 10 different stages and make it all the way to the boss. After each attempt, you can upgrade your character and become stronger for future runs. What really makes this game stand out is how incredibly fluid the combat feels. It easily features some of the best combat on this entire list. Every attack, movement and skill feels fast and responsive, making the gameplay highly satisfying from start to finish. This is the kind of roguelike that becomes addictive simply because of how fun it is to fight enemies. And that's not even mentioning its RPG progression system, which is also surprisingly well done and adds even more depth to the experience. This might be one of the ugliest games on this list when it comes to graphics, but it also has one of the most addictive gameplay loops. Let's talk about UNDERGUILD Offense. Most roguelikes are focused on upgrading your own character until the run eventually comes to an end. However, this game takes a very different approach. Instead of relying only on your character, you recruit other units to fight alongside you and protect you, which completely changes the gameplay experience. The main objective is still to survive for as long as possible, but as you can see, you can place additional characters on your team, and they are controlled by the AI. You can upgrade them, fuse them together, and make them even stronger as the run progresses. At the same time, you can build a squad of up to 10 characters, creating all kinds of combinations and strategies. It's a very different take on the roguelike genre and an incredibly addictive one. This might be one of the most beautiful games on today's list, and graphically I think it's absolutely charming. Let's talk about TAVERN. This is a fully isometric roguelike with a strong focus on both puzzles and combat. The interesting thing is that it's not just about fighting, but it's also not a game that constantly forces you to solve complex puzzles. Instead, it finds a nice balance between the two. You move your character across a grid much like in a tactical RPG. However, you also need to think carefully about how you approach enemies and each encounter. It's a little difficult to explain at first, but once you start playing, you'll understand the mechanics very quickly. Despite its cute and simple appearance, this is a roguelike with an impressive level of quality and a surprisingly engaging gameplay experience. Stellar SORA is a roguelike RPG that was released not too long ago. If you enjoy roguelike gameplay but also want something you can keep playing every day, this might be the perfect game for you. If you only look at the menus or some of the game's cutscenes, you might think it's just another mobile RPG with gacha mechanics and all the usual features. And that's actually part of what makes it interesting, because it really does have those elements. However, once you get into the combat, you'll discover a surprisingly fun roguelike experience. The gameplay feels smooth and enjoyable, and it's the kind of game that's simply relaxing to play for long periods of time. One of the coolest things is that the game is constantly receiving updates, including new characters to unlock and new maps for your runs. That means there's always something fresh to experience whenever you come back to play. I used to have a lot of prejudice against card games, especially card-based roguelikes, until I became completely addicted to this one. Let's talk about Slay the Spire. As far as I remember, the game doesn't really focus on a story. Instead, it's all about making your way through one massive run while facing an endless series of monsters and challenges. Unlike many other roguelikes, everything here revolves around the cards you draw and the deck you build along the way. Sometimes you won't get the cards you need, and that alone can be the difference between victory and defeat. Every decision matters, and a bad draw at the wrong moment can completely change the outcome of your run. Honestly, I think the only people who don't get addicted to this game are the ones who have never played it. You've probably played Angry Birds at some point and maybe you even miss it. Well, this game might be exactly what you're looking for. Let's talk about Slap 2. The core gameplay is very similar. As you can see, you pull your character back with your finger and launch them toward other enemies. However, the developers added a roguelike system that makes the experience much more interesting. Each character has its own set of upgrades and progression paths, which changes the way every run plays out. Even though the main concept is familiar, the addition of roguelike mechanics makes the game far more fun and engaging. Every run gives you new opportunities to improve your character and experiment with different builds. Honestly, I'd even call the idea genius. It's definitely a game worth checking out. It's a little difficult to explain how this game works because it's a puzzle game with a very unique gameplay style, and now let's talk about Shogun Showdown. The idea is still one run at a time, however the combat is almost like a tactical RPG, but it changes completely because it also works as a puzzle game. The goal is to defeat enemies on both sides, as you can see, using only the moves and actions you get from the tiles you draw. And yeah, I know you probably didn't understand much because it's really hard to explain and it works much better when you're actually playing it. But trust me, it's one of the most underrated games on this list and definitely worth checking out. I think we still haven't talked about a 2D roguelike, so let's go with the first one on our list. Let's talk about PLATYGUARD. This is a game with an insane gameplay loop. Seriously addictive, but in a 2D format that completely changes the way you play. The game does have a story and it's actually pretty good, set in a futuristic world. However, all of the missions take place in a roguelike hack and slash format where you need to defeat enemies as quickly as possible. The upgrades are constantly available throughout the game and you can also unlock and play with several different characters. Without a doubt, this is one of my favorites on this list with a beautiful gameplay style. Let's talk about Otherworld Legends. Even though it may not look like it, this is actually a classic roguelike. You enter rooms, defeat enemies, and slowly grow stronger while trying to see how far you can get. What I really need to highlight are the characters. You start with a character who is basically a street fighter, but there are many other characters that completely change the gameplay, from a Celtic warrior to a kung fu fighter. On top of that, the game has plenty of events and content that can easily keep you playing for hours and hours. This game is a more traditional roguelike. It's fairly unknown on the Playstore, but it's definitely worth checking out. We're talking about Nerd Survivors. The main idea is simple: survive for as long as possible while continuously upgrading your character. As with most roguelikes, every run feels different, and the upgrades you choose along the way can completely change how your character performs. One thing that really stands out is the variety of playable characters. There are more than 15 of them and each one offers a very different gameplay experience. Because of that, switching characters can make the game feel completely fresh and change the way you approach every run. Even though it's a more traditional roguelike, it still manages to be incredibly fun and exciting to play. This is the most addictive offline game on our list. You can easily spend over 100 hours playing it. Let's talk about Moonlighter. In this game, you get a mix of roguelike gameplay and management mechanics. You control your character inside dungeons, collecting items and defeating monsters. Then, during the day, you sell those items in your own shop. Both systems work incredibly well together. The roguelike side is intuitive and very fun to play, while the shop management side is extremely addictive and makes you want to keep playing all day long. It's not hard to find people doing 100-day or even 200-day challenges in this game, and that alone shows just how addictive it can be. Mob Rush is an insane roguelike set in the Mobile Legends universe, and yes, I know maybe you've never even heard of Mobile Legends, but you can still enjoy this game without any problem. The characters are technically the same, but honestly I don't even know who they are, and I still had a great time playing it. This is another simpler roguelike where your goal is just to survive for as long as possible. I think the biggest difference is how intense the game becomes. You start with your character shooting a single arrow, and by the end you're basically a god, casting lightning bolts and summoning monsters everywhere. Even though it looks simple, the game can be surprisingly difficult. I really like this game because it's the complete opposite of most roguelikes you'll find on the Playstore. Let's talk about Halls of Torment. Usually in roguelikes, your character goes through a crazy evolution, starting very weak and ending up incredibly powerful. But in this game, it's completely different, and the upgrades are much simpler, like plus 10 defense or plus 1 armor. That completely changes the way you play, and even though the upgrades may seem small, they make a huge difference over time. They're just not flashy or overpowered, which is exactly what makes the game so challenging. This is definitely the most different game on our list because it's actually an FPS. It's pretty unknown on the Playstore, so let's talk about GUNFIRE REBORN. It's actually a port, but a lot of people still don't know about it on mobile. The goal is to move through rooms and defeat as many enemies as possible, including the strange statues and creatures you find along the way. The big difference here is that the progression isn't focused on your character, but on your weapons. Your weapons completely change the way you play, while your character remains mostly the same. One interesting thing about this game is that even though it can be played offline, it also offers a cooperative mode, making the experience even more fun. Do you like the famous Hades but can't play it on your Android device? Then this game was clearly inspired by it. Let's talk about God Rivals. This is a more traditional roguelike and it was released in 2026, making it a very recent game. In it you play as a god slayer who must survive the many runs and challenges the game throws at you. There are 3 different characters to choose from and each one can be customized through a variety of upgrades and abilities that completely change the way they play. That's easily one of the game's strongest features. The gameplay is highly fluid with fast-paced combat that feels very similar to a hack and slash experience. Battles are satisfying, movement is responsive, and every run gives you new ways to build your character. It's definitely a game worth checking out. Encounter the Lost Cards is one of the most unique roguelikes you'll find in this video, and let's talk about it right now. This game embraces the roguelike formula in almost every possible way. From the progression of your character to the way the story unfolds, everything is built around player choices. Throughout the game, you'll find different cards that you can choose from, and those decisions can lead your adventure down completely different paths. The same idea applies to combat and exploration. The game has a sandbox-like feeling that makes it stand out from more traditional roguelikes. Because of that, every run feels unpredictable and different from the last. And of course, this is another game where dying can be a serious setback, making every decision feel important compared to many other roguelikes out there. Yeah, I absolutely love Elemental World. That's because I enjoy feeling like Aang from Avatar. Let's talk about this beautiful little game. The idea is pretty simple. You enter dungeons, see how long you can survive, and then leave to upgrade your character. But what really makes the game different is the way you use your abilities. The game lets you control different elements, and not only that, you can combine them as well. For example, water plus fire creates steam, which can help defeat certain enemies more efficiently. You can even combine up to 3 elements and create completely different effects. The game is really good, even though it has that appearance of a generic mobile game at first glance. Now let's talk about a simpler roguelike, the kind of game where you don't have to think too much. You just jump in, play, and try to survive. We're talking about Dragon Survival. There really isn't a lot to explain here. You start with your blonde heroine and begin fighting waves of monsters from an isometric perspective. As you level up, you unlock upgrades, including dragons that fly around you and help you defeat enemies. There are several different dragons to discover, along with upgrades and even fusion mechanics that allow you to combine them into stronger versions. After each run, you return to the main menu where you can upgrade your character and become stronger for future attempts. It's a very simple game, but it's the kind of simple that just works. Another Playstore game clearly inspired by Hades. Let's talk about a lesser known title called Dandy Ace. In this game, you play as a magician who has been trapped by his rival magician and now must use his card-based abilities to escape from that place. This is another one of those simpler roguelikes where you start out weak and try to see how far you can go. However, it's worth remembering that the game also has a main objective, basically a story mode. Even though the story isn't the main focus, completing it unlocks more content and gives you access to an insane endless mode that can keep you playing for a very long time. Now let's talk about an MMORPG that, believe it or not, is also a roguelike. In fact, it might be one of the most brutal games on this list. We're talking about Born Again Online. The game starts like any other MMORPG. You create your character and gradually become stronger over time. However, the game's world feels a lot like a roguelike, and so does its progression system. Honestly, that combination is absolutely brilliant. But one of the most challenging aspects of this game is that, just like many roguelikes where death means losing everything, the same thing can happen here. And that's a little counterintuitive because the whole idea of an MMORPG is usually to build a powerful character and keep progressing. So unlike traditional MMORPGs, dying is definitely not a good idea in this game, just like in other hardcore roguelikes. Without a doubt, this is the heaviest game on our list. It probably takes up around 10 gigabytes of storage. Let's talk about BLAZBLUE Entropy Effect. This is a very famous roguelike outside of the Playstore. Although it didn't become nearly as popular on mobile, it takes place in the universe of a fighting game, at least from what I was able to find. And honestly, I don't know any of the characters, but that didn't stop me from playing it a lot and getting to know several of them. This can also be considered a hack and slash game, but as you can see, everything happens in a 2D format. It's another somewhat straightforward roguelike, but if you enjoy fluid combat and fast-paced gameplay, you really need to play this one. This game is simply amazing and incredibly addictive. It has a roguelike style but also mixes in management mechanics. We're talking about Ball X Pit. I don't even know exactly what category to put this game in because it's completely different. It feels a lot like a pinball game in the way it plays and how you interact with it. The roguelike gameplay still follows the classic formula where every run is completely different and your goal is to see just how far you can make it. But that's not all. The game also features a management system where you build and develop a small town while defeating enemies through its roguelike gameplay loop. And best of all, the game is completely offline. ACECRAFT became quite popular when it launched because it looked a lot like Cuphead, but did you know it's also a roguelike? It's one of the most unique games on this list because it's a shoot 'em up game. Yeah, I don't even know the exact name of the genre, but the idea is simple. Shoot enemies, defeat them, and don't let them touch you, and honestly, mixing a roguelike system with this genre was a genius idea. The game became 10 times more addictive while keeping that Cuphead style look that so many people wish they could find on the Playstore. Even if you're not usually a fan of this type of game, I highly recommend giving it a chance. Let's finish this list with a super simple game, but one of those extremely addictive roguelikes. Let's end with 20 Minutes Till Dawn. This game doesn't really do anything extraordinary. The graphics aren't amazing and there aren't any groundbreaking features, but it's exactly the kind of roguelike that gets people hooked. The gameplay is simple. You pick a character and try to survive for as long as possible. Every time you level up, you choose from 3 upgrades, and that's basically it. The only real difference is that there are other characters to unlock, each with some combat variations. The game is extremely simple, but it's also one of the most addictive titles on this entire list. And that's it for today's list. If you know another amazing roguelike that deserves to be here, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later.